The province of Ontario is well into its implementation of full-day kindergarten. Next stop, modernizing childcare. And joining us now to tell us how the early learning rollout has been going and what's in the cards for the province's childcare system, here's Liz Sandals. She's Ontario's Minister of Education and the MPP for Guelph, and we welcome you back to TVO.
It's great to be back, Steve.
Get comfortable, because I'm going to go through the whole rigmarole here of how this rolled out, and then we'll come out with some questions. Control room, if you would. Full-day kindergarten began its rollout in 2010. It's now in its third year, and here's what we see. The school year, there are 122,000 4- and 5-year-olds in the program. Next year, they'll add another 60,000 to bring it to 184,000. When fully implemented, it'll be 265,000 kindergarten students by the year 2014-15. In addition to extending kindergarten to span the entire school day for this age, FDK programs are required to offer before and after school programs if 20 or more parents request it. As of 2012-13, 62% of full-day kindergarten schools operate the extended day programs, with 7% run by school boards and 93% run by so-called third-party operators. Offering childcare on holidays and PD days is optional. And one last thing here. Who pays for all this? Well, the extended care programs are fully funded by parent fees, with an average daily cost between $19 or so and $21, though in Toronto it can come in rather closer to $32 a day. Okay, full-day kindergarten was envisaged as a so-called seamless day, with the board operating programs of optional before and after school care. We are now at the midway point of the program having been implemented. How's it going?
I'm delighted with the way it's going. Yes, we have more work to do, but I think two good measures are, number one, parents are flocking to the program when it's available, and number two, when we look at the early research on FDK, kids are benefiting. So parents are happy, kids are happy, I'm happy.
Okay, having said that, we did see in the statistics just there that if the idea of the board essentially having not control, but responsibility for all of this, was the plan, that's not what's happening. 93% of this operation is being done by third-party operators.
Well, the interesting thing was, and my riding in Guelph was typical, is that when we first started to roll in full-day kindergarten, the child care sector and the parent sector said very strongly, you know, there's a lot of child care operators in the community that we already trust. The board said, you know, those operators often already have programs in the schools. We've got good working relation. We know they're high quality. And everybody said, they know a whole lot about childcare. The board doesn't know so much. Why can't we have third party?
Because that's not a seamless day then, necessarily.
Well, yes, it is, because you're not going to have one ECE being there.
Early childhood educator.
Sorry, I do lapse into edubabble. You're not going to have one early childhood educator being there from, say, 7 in the morning till 5 at night anyway. So there is going to be a change in the ECE. And for the child, what's really disruptive, I think, is if they need the before and or after, and they have to go from one place to school to another place. So from the child's point of view, and from the parent has to figure out how to move the kid, what really matters is somebody else coming into the same room, or do they just have to go down the hall to the child care that's already there? That's seamless. I mean, yes, there's a different face, but there was going to be a different face at some point during the day.
No, I get that, but seamless, my hunch is, to most parents means I don't have to pick up my child from one location, take him or her to another location.
And that's what's happening when parents ask for it.
Parents want that?
No, when the avoidance of moving the child is happening when parents are asking for it. So as your data showed, there's about 62% of the schools where we now have the before and after care being operated, often by third-party operators, but those are third-party operators who are fully licensed, who often have long-standing relationship with the board anyway.
Okay.
So the child doesn't have to be moved.
No, I get that, but that's not what was promised. What was promised was The Board of Education having responsibility for a full seamless day of activities for a child, the research of which shows that that's the best potential outcome for that child. That's not what's happening. That's what was promised.
What I'm saying is that when we really stopped and had a look at, do we need the board that isn't an experienced child care operator? Do we need to force the board to get into operating child care? Or when you've got a child care operator who you already know is high quality and who is often already working in a school setting doing before and after, you get an equally good outcome from having the third-party licensed operator provide the before and after program.
So does that mean there will be, going forward, no new programs operating or only existing programs operating?
No. If you look at that 62%, that's actually quite a dramatic increase from year one. So what has happened is that in the first year, parents often said, you know, I've got other arrangements. I'm not so sure about this. I think I'll just keep my child before and after school where they used to be. As the program rolled in, parents started to say, you know what, I do want a program at my child's school, so I don't need to move them. And boards have actually gone out and arranged for a whole lot of additional contracts for new programs. So that 62% of schools offering before and after represents a whole bunch of schools that didn't used to have before and after.
Okay, let me read you what the Toronto Star editorialized about this a month ago. I'm sure you saw this, but for the benefit of our viewers, here we go. It's another classic case, the Star says, of good intentions, bad execution. The Ontario government's ambitious plan for full-day kindergarten is creating turmoil for daycare centres in Toronto schools because, as usual, nothing unfolds as it should. For some daycares, the financial and operational complications created by the new before and after school care for 4- and 5-year-old kindergarten students have made the program almost impossible to provide. For parents, it means higher costs, lost hot lunch programs, and ongoing uncertainty about whether the programs will run during summer months when working parents need help the most. Toronto daycares are already at risk due to severe underfunding. Now staff say they're losing subsidies, struggling to find space that meets daycare licensing requirements, and can't find staff willing to work split shifts. How much of that you want to sign on to?
Well, I think first of all we need to recognize that when you say 4- and 5-year-olds are going to be in school all day, that clearly meant that was going to have an impact on the child care system. So what we've actually been doing is working with child care operators to help them shift to working more with 3-year-olds. So in fact, we've put some significant funding in place, particularly in school-based settings, to help child care operators convert over to marketing during the day to 3-year-olds. So that's something that we knew would happen. It's something that we've actually provided significant funding to help the child care operators to make that transition to 3-year-olds. And let's bring this back to the parent's point of view. If you're a parent, there are now more spaces available for 3-year-olds than there used to be, and your child is in school in a wonderful program all day for 4-year-olds and 5-year-olds. And what we need to remember is not every parent wants a before and after program for 4- and 5-year-olds, because sometimes they actually are at home with mom.
But what about the thrust of the editorial, which is good idea, bad rollout?
No, what I would say is that by definition we were changing the way we do things. And whenever we change the way we do things, that means change. And when there's change, people aren't necessarily always comfortable with the change, but we have been supporting the change very much. We've been working with the child care operators. We've increased the funding for child care each and every year, more money. We're now committed in this year's budget an extra $39 million out to 15-16. So we're committing to continuing to increase the child care funding. through to 15-16, which is the out year in this year's budget. And we've also put in place actually a new funding model for the municipal child care service operators.
Which doesn't seem to have done much good in Peel, where they shut down a whole bunch of them, right?
Well, you have to distinguish between child cares that are directly operated by municipalities and ones that are operated by third parties, often nonprofit. So if I look at, say, Guelph, the area I know best, what I would see is the Y, clearly a nonprofit operator, actually is expanding its programming. So it actually expanded its programming, doing before and after programming in schools.
But I'm going to take you back to Peel, where I think it was the municipally run child care. Was it a dozen or so shut down? Which theoretically means there are fewer child care spaces in the region of Peel as a result.
Well, when we look at the data, in fact, it is not true that the number of daycare spaces has fallen. What we see is, in fact, there actually are more daycare spaces now.
In Peel?
I'm not sure about Peel. I'm looking provincially because that tends to be the data I get, is that there's actually more daycare spaces now than there were before the JK program, FDK program started to roll in. So you get these sort of anomalies that one person closes, another person opens up, somebody's picking up more spots, somebody's delivering less spots. What I'm interested in is the minister is what's the net. And what I see as the net is that the number of spots has actually increased somewhat.
Okay, let me see if I can figure this out and if I've got this right. When you brought out your policy for, and I don't think you were Minister of Education at the time, this was your predecessor who did it, who brought this seamless day policy out to be run by the school boards, there was quite a stink made by those who provide childcare in the private sector and the nonprofit sector who said, look, you're going to put us out of business. If you're taking this over, we're in trouble. You're going to put us out of business. So the provincial government, what's the right expression here, climbed down a bit on this and said, okay, we're not going to do this the way we originally said. You guys stay in business and it'll all work out. Now I understand you want to, quote unquote, modernize the whole child care system as it now stands. What does a modernized, transformed child care sector, which includes the rollout of full-day kindergarten, look like to you?
Well, if you look at the Day Nurseries Act the way it's currently written, it's way out of date. So one of the things we want to do is, for example, get rid of some of the incentives that seem to be built in the system for home operators to go the unlicensed route and create more incentives for home operators to join the licensed home daycare. So we think that that's better for kids, that even when they're in a home daycare setting, to be in a licensed one, because there's then more supervision, more quality control. That's one thing we want to do. We will continue to work with the operators to provide more programming for 3-year-olds, because obviously there's lots of people, mums who are working, who do need child care for 3 years old. So that's a good thing if we can have more space for 3-year-olds. There's a bunch of rules that are just weird. So we're talking about extended day programs and the fact that often they actually happen in the same classroom as the FDK program, except that people will talk about having to do the furniture shuffle, because the regulations for childcare say that you need different stuff in the room than the stuff that the kids have had in the FDK class. So they've been sitting on all day.
We got to change that.
Like, this is just dumb rules.
Okay.
So we need to look at the dumb rules and get rid of them. We also need to put in a licensing regime that the Auditor General would like, which is do risk-based monitoring and risk-based licensing. So you don't go and hassle the person who has a spotless record every year. You actually put your concentration on inspection with people that have had challenges where you know that there's a high risk, so that we actually do a better job of monitoring the people that are in place. And we need to remember that not everybody is looking for childcare. We also need to look at the other programs we have for preschoolers, things like early years centers, best start centers, parent centers, and see how we bring them all together to best serve. We need to think about rural settings. How do we best serve rural settings as well?
I got lots more questions, but I also got 5 people who want to have at this policy who are coming on right after you. So, Minister Sandals, I'm going to thank you for coming in, particularly since I know you're a bit under the weather. So we thank you for coming into TVO tonight and helping us out with this.
Thank you so much. It's great to see you.
Minister of Education, Liz Sandals.
Support Ontario's public television. Donate at tvo.org.